What's going on, team? Proof here, and welcome to my deck guide series for Overdressed Set 1, Genesis of the 5 Greats. And instead of presenting a deck list and talking about it and then going into replays like I normally do, I'm going to do things a little bit differently this time. So I'm going to start with talking about the ride deck and then going over the overall goal of what it's accomplishing. And then after that, I'm going to talk about 3 key cards that are either important for the deck's function or cards that you want to look for in your hand post mulligan. After that, I'm going to go into the general overview of the deck. And then since this is more of a general overview, I want you to keep in mind that the gameplay of the deck can change depending on the matchups. And then I'm going to give a couple pros and cons. And finally, we'll finish things up with a sample deck to tie everything together. So I hope you stick around and I hope you enjoy. And for this video, we got Baromagnes. And the goal of Baromagnes' ride deck is get you most of the way there to Baromagnes' 10 soul skill, because to me that's where you want to be as of your first grade 3 ride. The ride line itself gets you to 6 in soul because Soniker gets your soul, and then Electro Spartan represents 2 soul with his skill when Baromagnes rides on him. And then Spartan also allows you to set a card in soul for the future, kind of put on layaway that you can call out later. And ideally, you want to try and maybe get another Soniker in there because it makes it a key piece to be called out with Baromagnes' 15 soul skill. As for the key cards, we got Curtis, Engraver, and Electro Spartan himself, which is the first in the series for a ride line card to be featured in the key card section. Curtis and Electro Spartan represent efficient ways to soul charge too, and Engraver really shines because her on hit allows you to get another soul charge in, which makes it a threat for your opponent. So you might drag some other cards out of their hand that they otherwise may have wanted to keep because they don't want you to accelerate to the 15 soul skill. But it also shines in her 10 skill, being able to shove herself into the soul after she attacks and counter charge. So being able to really utilize that to make sure you don't get locked out is a key for Baromagnes players. As for the gameplay overview, you're really trying to get to the 10 soul skill as quickly and efficiently as possible. That way you can abuse the crit skill with the draw skill to start gaining some value back and putting some pressure on your opponent. And then you kind of want to ride that out for a couple turns. And then when it gets to the later portion of the game, after you've grinded down your opponent's resources through the crit skill because they don't want to die, you can then start to really put the hammer down with the 15 skill and get 5 attacks off on your opponent. For the pros for Baro, it has a very straightforward game plan in that there's kind of a roadmap to follow, such as get the 10 soul, abuse that for a couple turns, and then when things are looking kind of grim for the opponent and you're able to get the 15 soul, get to 15 soul and then start to beat your opponent down with the 5 attacks there. If that's what you're looking for in the deck, then Baro's definitely the deck for you. And then another pro is that you really have constant and consistent pressure coming from Baromagnes himself, and like the rear guards kind of act as like little jabs. Like for a boxer, you kind of like have like little jabs there, then Baro comes down with the big hook that you want to look out for, and sometimes you may not be able to protect yourself from it and you just have to take it. As for the cons, with Baro being a piece reliant combo deck, you kind of sometimes you'll find yourself in those tough positions where you need to figure out if you're trying to keep a piece around to discard for the ride deck, or if you need to discard a shield. And sometimes by sacrificing the shield, you make yourself more vulnerable to being rushed down by your opponent. And so you have to really try to navigate those particular turns effectively to make sure you can still get your game plan off. And for the other con, decking out is a very real possibility. So if you find the game going on longer than you anticipated, you're going to be looking at your deck count and seeing if you have enough to last until you can finally finish off your opponent. And sometimes you can make it, and then sometimes you probably can't. But that means you have to look out for certain cards in your deck that have mandatory soul charges when placed out, and those cards become more of a liability as the game goes on. So that'll do it for the overview. Let's go ahead and get to the sample deck. And the thing I'm sure that you notice about the sample deck is that outside of the triggers, the perfect guards, the additional Sonikers, and the additional Baros, the rest of the deck allows you to soul charge to make sure you meet your soul thresholds. And there's a few cards I wanted to touch on that I didn't get to talk about previously, such as Gun Gun. Gun Gun, like in Bruce, offers an additional soul to help us achieve our soul goal. Unlike in Bruce, you're very likely not going to be using the Soul Blast 3 skill because you want to make sure that you keep your soul reserves high for Baro. The exception might be in matchups where you notice you don't need the 15 soul skill, or you're in desperate need of getting that additional card. And there are several orders in the deck to help us achieve our goals, such as Crawl You Insects and Brother Soul. Crawl You Insects is useful not only for the soul charge, but also because it can make a unit massive. It's more useful to use it on the rear guard than in Barrow in my opinion, but you have the option to use it on Barrow if the need is there. The downside is that the counterblast cost can conflict with Barrow, so that's something you want to look out for while playing the deck. Brother Soul is played to give us the max number of possible soul charge 2 cards that Barrow can feasibly play between Brother Soul, Spartan, and Curtis to help us ensure that we meet our 10 soul by the first Barrow ride. Since the ride deck puts us at 6 by itself, we just need to find 2 of the soul charge 2 cards, then we're really good to go. As for the triggers, we have 8 crit, 3 draw, 4 heal, and 1 Galmageld. The crits and the Galmageld gives us max chances of Barrow, with the crit being as scary as possible, so the opponent doesn't feel safe even if they're at 3 damage. If you're afraid of the draws leading you to decking out a lot, you can exchange them out for fronts, that's no problem really. So the deck is really geared towards getting you to 10 soul as quickly as possible and starting applying that pressure. And then you can see if and when it's time to go for 15 and really push for game. So that'll do it for the deck guide on Baromagnes. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time. Peace, be easy.
Listen.